Cameras were rolling live. A complete came from the flat and Julia Roberts' face absolutely changed. Jimmy Fallon was mid-quest. The affectionate of light, antic catechism he'd asked 1,000 times afore on The Tonight Show. Julia Roberts was answering with her signature charm. That million-dollar smile. The beam that had captivated audiences for decades. The effortless adroitness of addition absolutely adequate in advance of cameras. It was an absolute interview. The admirers was engaged. The roots were accessible with agreeable cues. Aggregate was abounding absolutely as it should. And afresh from about abreast the aback of the flat came a sound. Not loud, not dramatic, aloof a sound. A child's laugh, high-pitched, spontaneous, pure. The affectionate of beam that stands out because it's so genuine, so unself-conscious. Julia chock-full talking mid-sentence. Her smile vanished. Her arch angry acutely against the larboard ancillary of the studio, abroad from Jimmy, abroad from the cameras. Her duke rose to her chest. Her eyes went wide. Jimmy noticed immediately. Julia, he said, his antic accent gone, replaced by 18-karat concern. Are you okay? Julia didn't answer. She was staring at article in the admirers section. Her absolute anatomy rigid. Her announcement transforming from Hollywood allure to raw accessible emotion. In the amount of 3 seconds, the admirers fell silent. The roots chock-full their attenuate accomplishments playing. Questlove's drumsticks froze midair. 300 bodies aback ambiguous what they were witnessing. Cameras were alive aback a complete came from the flat and Julia Roberts' announcement afflicted absolutely in seconds. Jimmy set bottomward his dejected account cards. He leaned advanced, afterward Julia's boring against the audience. Julia, what's happening? Julia's duke was still apprenticed to her chest. Her eyes were bushing with tears. Aback she assuredly spoke. Her articulation was almost aloft a whisper, but the flat microphones bent every word. That laugh, she said. I apperceive that laugh. The ascendancy allowance erupted into controlled chaos. Director Dave Damed was speaking rapidly into his headset. Camera 3, acquisition what she's attractive at. Camera 2, break on Julia. Do we go to commercial? Addition acquaint me what's happening. Producer Gavin Sell stood abaft Dave, watching the monitors intently. Keep rolling, he said quietly. Don't cut. Article absolute is happening. Jimmy stood up from abaft his desk. Not the accidental continuing he did for ball bits, but burning protective. He absolved about the board against Julia's chair. Julia, allocution to me. What's activity on? Julia acicular with a abashed duke against the aback larboard area of the flat audience. Rose 7, she whispered. C12. That little girl, her laugh. Camera 3 swung against the audience, zooming in on row 7. The abetta scanned beyond the seats until landing on a babyish figure, a girl, maybe 8 years old, sitting amid 2 adults. She had coiled aphotic beard pulled aback in a ponytail cutting an amethyst sweater. She was accoutrement her aperture with both hands, attractive ashamed that her ad-lib beam had somehow disrupted the show. Oh my God, Julia said, continuing up from the bedfellow armchair so abruptly that it formed backward. Oh my God, that's not possible. Jimmy chock-full mid-joke. The absolute flat froze. To accept what happened next, you charged to accept what happened 19 years earlier. Julia Roberts wasn't consistently Julia Roberts. Global superstar and America's sweetheart. In 2005, she was already famous. Pretty Woman was 15 years abaft her. She'd won her Oscar for Erin Brockovich. She was one of the best accustomed actresses in the world, but she was additionally a mother aggravating to antithesis an absurd career with adopting twins. Her babe Hazel and son Phineas were built in 2004. Julia had taken time off from filming, aggravating to be present, aggravating to accord her accouchement a accustomed adolescence admitting the cameras and acclaim and affiliated attention. One afternoon in Los Angeles, Julia took 3-year-old Hazel to a children's museum. Aloof the two of them. No nannies, no security, no handlers. Julia wore sunglasses and a baseball cap, acquisitive to alloy in for a few hours. In the museum's music room, Hazel became captivated with a babyish xylophone. She was arena accidental notes, absolutely absorbed. A back edition little girl, maybe 4 years old, approached and asked if she could play too. The girl's name was Sophie. She had coiled aphotic beard and ablaze eyes and a beam that articulate like wind chimes. She and Hazel played calm for 20 account while Julia sat on an adjacent bank watching, beholden for this moment of accustomed adolescence interaction. Sophie's mother sat bottomward beside Julia. She was young, mid-20s with annoyed eyes and acrylic decrepit hands. An artist, she explained, disturbing to accomplish rent. Adopting her babe abandoned, afterwards Sophie's ancestor larboard aback she was a baby. They talked while their daughters played. About motherhood, about fear, about aggravating to accession acceptable bodies in a complicated world. Your babe has an admirable laugh, Julia said, watching Sophie cackle at article Hazel had done. Acknowledge you, Sophie's mother said. It's the alone affair that keeps me activity sometimes. A back aggregate abroad feels impossible. I apprehend her beam and bethink why I'm accomplishing this. Julia accepted that activity completely. Aback it was time to leave. The mothers exchanged buzz numbers. Maybe we could do this again, Sophie's mother said hopefully. It's adamantine to acquisition added moms who I don't apperceive who get it. Julia capital to say yes. She capital to explain that she was an aloof edition mom at a children's museum. That scheduling playdates would be complicated by aegis and paparazzi and the accoutrement of fame. But article and Sophie's mother's tired, hopeful eyes fabricated her aloof nod and smile. I'd like that. Julia said she never called, not because she didn't appetite to, but because activity accelerated again. New cine offers, columnist tours. The twins accepting older, defective added attention. The buzz cardinal got absent in a purse that got donated to charity. Sophie and her mother became a candied anamnesis filed abroad. With bags of added abrupt encounters until tonight, 19 years later, aback a child's beam rang out in the Tonight appearance flat, and Julia Roberts accustomed it instantly admitting about 2 decades of distance. Subscribe and leave a animated version because the best able allotment of this adventure is still ahead. Julia was continuing now, one Duke arresting the aback of her armchair for support, staring at the little babe in row 7, who was aggravating to bore into her seat, ashamed by the attention. What's your name? Julia alleged out, her articulation trembling. The little babe looked at her mother, the woman sitting beside her, whose face had gone anemic with recognition, and afresh aback at Julia. Emma, she said quietly. And your mother? Julia asked, admitting she somehow already knew. The woman in the admirers stood slowly. She was in her mid-40s now. The annoyed eyes were still there, but altered somehow. Older, wiser, still accustomed weight, but cutting it with added grace. My name is Sophie Martinez, the woman said, her articulation austere, admitting accessible emotion. We met already at a children's building in Los Angeles 19 years ago. You were with your daughter, Hazel. I was with Emma's earlier sister. Her name was Sophie, too. Named afterwards me. Julia's Duke flew to her mouth. Was she whispered? Sophie Martinez nodded, tears alive bottomward her face. She died 7 years ago. Leukemia. She was 12 years old. The flat went absolutely silent. Not a sound, not a breath. 300 bodies and millions watching at home. Address attestant to affliction blow into a allocution appearance interview. Emma was built in 2 years afore Sophie died. Sophie Martinez continued, her articulation breaking but blame through. Sophie, my Aboriginal daughter, acclimated to allocution about that day at the building all the time, about Arena xylophone with the nice babe whose mommy wore sunglasses inside. She remembered you. She didn't apperceive you were famous. She aloof remembered you were kind. Julia was Aaron above board now, architecture running, Hollywood allure absolutely bear away. I'm so sorry, she said. I'm so apologetic I never called. I capital too. I anticipation about you so abounding times. I absent your cardinal, and you don't charge to apologize. Sophie disconnected gently. I'm not actuality for an apology. I'm actuality because aback Sophie was dying, aback she was in the hospital in her final weeks. She asked me to accomplish her a promise. The cameras were bound on this moment. Jimmy Fallon stood off to the side, tears alive bottomward his own face, authoritative no attack to adumbrate them. The Roots had absolutely chock-full playing. Questlove was wiping his eyes. What promise? Julia whispered. Abaft the scenes, Fallon fabricated an accommodation that defied every producer's expectation. Sophie Martinez accomplished into her purse and pulled out article small, a photograph beat at the edges from actuality agitated for years. She captivated it up. The angel showed 2 little girls at a xylophone, both smiling, absolutely captivated in their play. I took this that day at the museum, Sophie said. Sophie kept it by her hospital bed. She fabricated me affiance that if I any time had addition adventitious to acknowledge you, I would. She said you gave her mother achievement that day. That watching you be a approved mom in a building fabricated her feel like our activity was accustomed, alike admitting we were struggling. She said that moment mattered. Julia absolved off the date platform. Not hesitantly, not allurement permission, she absolved beeline into the admirers section. Blame accomplished aggregation members, aggressive over seats until she accomplished row 7. She knelt and advanced of Sophie Martinez and Emma. May I? Julia asked, gesturing against the photograph. Sophie handed it to her. Julia looked at it for a continued moment. Two little girls who didn't apperceive about blight or accident or the weight that was coming. Aloof to accouchement arena music calm on an accustomed afternoon. Julia accomplished up and removed her earrings. They were simple but elegant, the affectionate of chaste adornment she consistently wore. She apprenticed them into Emma's babyish hands. These were my mother's, Julia said softly. She gave them to me afore she died. She told me to accord them to Edition, who accepted that admirable moments amount alike aback their brief, alike aback they feel ordinary. She looked at Sophie Martinez. Your sister gave you a admirable name and an alike added admirable laugh. Don't anytime stop application it. Emma started crying. Sophie Martinez pulled Julia into an embrace that lasted 15 abnormal, while 300 bodies watched in adherent silence. But this is the moment no one in the flat, and no one watching at home anytime saw coming. Jimmy Fallon absolved into the audience. He climbed over the aforementioned seats Julia had climbed over until he stood beside them. He looked at Sophie Martinez. What was your daughter's admired song? He asked. Sophie looked confused. What? Your Aboriginal daughter. Sophie, what was her admired song? She admired about Over the Rainbow, the Israel Kamakawa version. She played it constantly. Jimmy angry aback against the date, and alleged out to Questlove. You apperceive it. Questlove nodded, already extensive for his buzz to cull up the chords. Comedy it, Jimmy said. Right now for Sophie. The Tonight Appearance Orchestra, one of the finest agreeable groups in television, began to comedy about Over the Rainbow in that studio, soft, gentle, heartbreakingly beautiful. Julia Roberts stood in the audience, arm about Sophie Martinez, both of them acceptable hardly to the music, while Emma captivated her mother's Duke and Julia's earrings, tears alive bottomward her adolescent face. The admirers didn't applaud. They aloof listened. Some cried. Abounding captivated easily with the strangers sitting abutting to them. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second. Aback the song ended, Jimmy battened anon to the camera. We're not activity to do the blow of the appearance tonight, he said, his articulation blubbery with emotion. Some moments are added important than television. This is one of them. Share and subscribe. Accomplish abiding this adventure is never forgotten. The appearance went to an continued articulation about adolescence blight analysis, with Sophie Martinez administration her daughter's story. Julia sat beside her the absolute time captivation her hand. Afterwards the cameras chock-full rolling, Julia exchanged buzz numbers with Sophie and Emma. This time she called. The abutting week, in fact, and the anniversary afterwards that. 6 months later, Julia abounding Emma's 9th altogether party. She brought Hazel, who was now 22. The two girls who had played xylophone calm as toddlers met again, affiliated by an anamnesis either of them absolutely remembered, but both had been shaped by. Share and subscribe. Accomplish abiding this adventure is never forgotten. The photograph from the children's building now sits in Julia's home office. Beside it, a babyish applique reads, For Sophie, who accomplished us that accustomed moments become amazing aback we accept to bethink them. Jimmy keeps an account from that night on his desk. Not of the celebrity moment, of the audience. 300 strangers captivation easily with bodies they'd never met. United by witnessing article real. Emma still has Julia's earrings. She wore them to her Ariel Academy graduation.